समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Welcome to the World View with Swasti. Today I'm at Vilnius, which is the capital of Lithuania, and I am speaking to Mr. Laimonas Kelpša, who is currently the political director at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In many ways, you can understand that he is the counterpart to our Foreign Secretary. So for all practical purposes, I'm speaking to the Foreign Secretary of Lithuania. Welcome, Mr. Kelpša, and for the benefit of the Indian viewers, I think many of them perhaps also remember you, that you were Lithuania's ambassador to India from 2013 to 2018. So what a pleasure it is to speak to you. Thank you for taking the time out for Worldview with Swasti, and I really appreciate this kind gesture.
Namaste, Swati.
Namaste.
Swagat hai.
Oh, I can see you are very good with Hindi as well.
Really happy to have you here.
Okay, thank you, sir. So let's just begin with where things are. You know that India and the EU, you are a member of both the EU and the NATO, and India and the EU are negotiating a free trade agreement, an ambitious one, which has been in the making for many, many years. But, you know, recently there's also been concerns in your part of the world, especially the Baltics and countries like Poland, you know, of the eastern flank, about India's strategic relationship with Russia, and as well as India's participation in the SAPAD exercises. So why not let's just begin from this particular point. What is the level of support from your countries? Do you think this strategic agenda is somewhere conflicting in the economic agenda between the two sides? Because I know that both sides are working very hard to finalize this FTA when Ursula von der Leyen comes to India next month in January as chief guest for our Republic Day. So your thoughts on that?
Well, absolutely. There should be no doubt that Lithuania, European Union as such, they need broader trade alliances. They need the opportunities of growth, of investment. And India is definitely one of such markets where we have been looking for many years with great interest, including as Lithuania. So for diversification of our economy, for getting better access to resources, to trade, the human capital, which Lithuania already enjoys sharing with India for a decade or so. So many students from India coming to study in our country. So all of that is bringing benefit. And then it's definitely, if that is consolidated under such a certain framework and providing a better, more predictable environment for businesses, for people to do their interactions, that would only be a benefit, a win-win situation for both sides.
So you mean to say that there is support from your countries as far as the EU-India FTA negotiations?
Well, definitely, we might have certain disagreements in views of how we approach Russia present day, and we have had it for, again, it's nothing new. We have had it for forever, probably. But I don't want to be too bold in stating too much. Which is obvious or not, but in general, when I was serving in India, also had this many interactions with my Indian counterparts. I understand the roots from which India's strategic approach towards Russia grow, and that on the other hand, Lithuania has its own history and its past and roots, which give a very legitimate concern about what Russia has been doing to us. I mean, it has certain implications, but we do have a dialogue with our Indian counterparts. We have a dialogue which has been growing, which is evolving, which is opening new pages. Our ministers have been traveling to India recently. We have Indian embassy opened in Lithuania a couple of years ago, and I do remember we've been struggling to have this mission accomplished again since 2008. So there is a progress which is satisfactory to both sides. I believe that we do share this basic sentiment that we need to cooperate closer, and we keep doing that.
So one could expect that even from the Baltic countries, so to say, as far as the EU-India FTA negotiations are going, there would be support largely.
I'm most sure that there will be support, and in general, when we try to figure out how the trade policies of European Union work, this is the lead role of European Commission in that. Member states, we do have our opinions which we express in different formations of the EU, but in the end, it's European Commission taking lead in
Right.
that direction.
Okay. No, that's important because I mean this is something which is going to be the biggest, so to say, news with which we'll open 2026. So obviously we need to be on the same page as far as the negotiations are concerned. And as far as I know, that we have been, both sides have been trying very hard to reach agreement on all 23 chapters. Of course, as we are speaking, there are trade negotiators from the European Union that are in Delhi that are doing that work. Now let's come back to the security situation in your side. And here, let me ask you another burning question, which has come. I don't think to you it comes as a surprise, but for sure for many viewers, recently last week, Donald Trump's administration came up with a new national security strategy. And the new national security strategy is full of a lot of these utterances, which make life very difficult for Europe as you are facing a war today and you're trying to ramp up your security, support Ukraine, and all that, and keeping the solidarity together, etc. The question is that how do you see the vulnerability of the eastern flank, particularly under spotlight, after what Donald Trump has said? Or do you think that this is rhetoric on the one hand, but on the ground, the relationship or between you and your transatlantic cooperation is more pragmatic? Please help us understand that, because this is something that we need to hear from the eastern flank itself.
Well, if you just follow the text of the national security strategy, which has just been published letter by letter, you would see that in the chapter called the Europe, our countries, Central Eastern Europe, has been named as good guys in a way which gives certain optimism. But I think this general framework in which the strategy has been outlined, we have to look into that framework in the first place, and it sends a message which has been obvious here in Europe for more than a decade.
So it doesn't really surprise you?
I guess it has surprised certain people in other corners of European Union, but here in Lithuania, we've been under this feeling and then growing understanding that pivot to Asia or pivot away from Europe is happening. And then what conclusion you draw from this understanding? Is it dooming Europe to some kind of geopolitical failure, or on the other hand, this is an invitation to take larger responsibility for yourself, or again, as a strategy puts it in their language, to help Europe to stand up on its feet? And this is a process we've been witnessing in Europe, was not coming easy, despite all those, again, dramatic challenges coming and knocking on our door, including with Russia's invasion and annexation of Crimea in 2014. So this was the wake-up call. Even before, in 2008, Russia invaded Georgia and then declared certain parts of a sovereign country independent republics, which then it recognized. So that was an open challenge to the principle of territorial integrity. So not hearing those wake-up calls or ignoring them would have been a mistake. I think in Lithuania we've drawn our lesson. I mean, we started increasing our defense spending and reviewing our defense strategy starting from 2014. And that shift has been dramatic. We can talk about it.
No, I will talk about that, Mr. Kalpsha. But the thing is that there are a couple of things here. Now, one is that in large sections of the global strategic community, it is widely held that the reason why this war is happening is because Russia has genuine security concerns about NATO's eastward expansion. You were an erstwhile Soviet state, and the three Baltics.
Erstwhile occupied state. That's an important correction. Yes.
All right. And you joined NATO and the EU. I mean, the three of you together. How much do you agree with this argument that the war in Ukraine today is a result of NATO's eastward expansion? Because what I hear in Europe is different from what I hear from the Russian colleagues. So, how do we best make sense of what is happening?
I think this concept that NATO enlargement or European Union enlargement has provoked Russia to do something is a blatant nonsense in a general way. I mean, Lithuania has joined European Union and NATO in 2004. So tell me at least one example in which way, in which form Lithuania's membership of NATO in particular has challenged Russia's security in the region. I mean, up to Russia's own invasion.
But hasn't it been Russia's long-standing demand for Ukraine to not join NATO? And in many ways, it stands assuaged by Donald Trump,
Yeah,
or
but
vindicated by Donald Trump when he says that
look,
NATO's eastward expansion and open door policy is a problem. I mean, how do you make sense of it? Because when we look at it from our part of the world, we have a Europe which is becoming more of an outlier because one of the most important leaders within NATO, which is the United States, is having a very different view on these topics. So, what is the better way to make sense of it?
look, what the Russians' concern are based on. So for a diplomat, it's probably also worthwhile trying to put himself or herself in the other side's shoes and try to understand their concerns. So we've been doing that for forever. I don't know, since the very first day of Lithuania reestablishing its independence. So what the Russian concerns are? I mean, these I can understand the psychological side of that. And then if you have been living in a world which is largely imaginary and invented of being in permanent confrontation with NATO and expecting that NATO or the US will attack you one day, and you've spent 50 years living within this paradigm. Of course, changing that into something else is different and complicated. But the real facts on the ground, I mean, the first fact is that NATO has never been an offensive alliance. I mean, NATO has been formed as a defense alliance from the communist threat back in 1949. So that's the founding principle, and all the structures that NATO has built and all the principle and culture of cooperation within NATO it has evolved ever since was based on the principle of countering threat rather than building a challenge to somebody else. So countering that threat was a predominant thing. That's one part, one argument. And second part argument, I mean, just the basic reality. When Lithuania joined the alliance back in 2004, what has changed here in the Baltic Sea region? I mean, NATO troops have arrived and been deployed on our soil? No, they have not. I mean, the only thing which has been added, and that was important from our reading, that Lithuania's airspace, since we don't have or haven't had at that time a very well developed and sophisticated air defense. So the NATO Baltic Air Police mission has been established, which means 4 aircrafts have landed in Lithuania and they started circulating in the airspace to control that there is no illegal intrusion in the airspace. So has that changed in any strategic way Russia's position, or has that harmed any interest of Russia here in this area? Russia had interest and remains to have those interests in having access to the region of Kaliningrad, which is a very specific geopolitical place.
Yes.
So that arrangement again has been agreed in the framework of Lithuania's accession to the European Union, and to have a smooth passage of passenger flow through the territory of Lithuania. The system is working even today under Russia's ongoing war of aggression against Ukraine. That has not been disturbed. So what threat actually that makes? So I keep challenging this very notion that NATO and European Union aggression has challenged Russia.
Now I'll just ask one more question. Regarding this particular scenario before we move on to other things, which is that what makes you believe that, I mean, now if it's been 4 years of the Ukraine war, it has been pretty much a transformational shift for Europe in so many ways, and of course the security transformation being one. Now there's one thing that I'd like to understand from you and your opinion on it, which is that when Putin has gone on record saying that he does not have any plans of attacking the Baltics or anybody else in Europe, Why do you think that there is this rhetoric or reality? Now you have to help me understand that. That Europeans say that if Putin is or Russia is not stopped in Ukraine, then it is going to attack the rest of Europe. I mean, but President Putin's statements have been on the contrary, right? So what gives you this impression?
But Russia said they will never attack Ukraine. I mean, it's written
Okay.
black and white in this so-called memorandum, Budapest Memorandum in 1994, which concluded that Ukraine will get rid of the nuclear arsenal it inherited from the Soviet Union in exchange for security guarantees from four nations, including United States
United States, UK.
and Russia,
Hmm.
agreeing that and they will provide the security for Ukraine and commit to respect the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine.
Okay.
Also, later on, I don't remember the date now immediately, but it was late 90s, beginning of the year 2000, that Russia concluded a border treaty with Ukraine. Again, acknowledging officially that this is the territorial line that we have between
I
our
think this is
countries.
1997. This is a big treaty of friendship between Russia and Ukraine.
And then which included Crimea as part of Ukraine. And Crimea had been granted an autonomy in Ukraine, a very specific both territorial and government system and that they had. So there were concessions on both. There was some mutual understanding, and there were legally binding agreements. And the language which Russia had adopted, that's why we're doing those treaties. That's why we're concluding them, so that we will not have war between us. And in the end, you still come and attack. So what kind of credibility does that have for any argument that you pursue?
Okay, all right. Now, just because of also this war, we see that there have been millions of refugees from Ukraine, especially in your region, in Poland, etc. Tell me a little bit about how the Ukrainian refugees are here. What is the number of them, and what is the, what is the response of the local population towards them?
Well, I mean, the war had opened eyes to many in Europe just to realize the size of Ukraine as such. And I think this flow of war refugees was one of them. When you got almost 8 million people landing on your soil overnight, literally overnight, and in the span of a couple of weeks, 8 million people leaving.
So there are 8 million people.
Now will be less
Okay.
because over 4 years, some of them came back, some
Okay.
of them relocated probably to other continents. So we don't know. I don't know the number for sure. In Lithuania, in the beginning, the first weeks after the war, we had roughly 90,000 of people from Ukraine fleeing from the war and atrocities. Currently, there are roughly 60,000. These 60,000, to understand the community, is predominantly women and children.
Yeah.
And they have specific needs. Children need schooling and education, which we cater to provide. And the women, they have to work to provide for their families.
Yeah.
And while they work, somebody has to take care of the children. So this is like this very sensitive ecosystem. But I think the integration process and the relationship with Lithuanian population in here has been so far successful. We do not have this anti-Ukrainian sentiment in general, and the support for Ukraine and Ukraine's victory in this really unjust war is just prevailing, even after 4 years of war.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for those elaborations, Mr. Kelpsha. But now let me just come to another side of the world, to China. So many people that know Lithuania in India know because you stood up against China's economic coercion, against the 17+1 mechanism. And one of the things that we now discuss a lot in India is how China's 17+1 mechanism is not really working the manner in which it was imagined. It became a victim of overpromise and under-delivery, and Lithuania becomes then the poster boy of actually standing up and calling out that economic coercion. And ever since that 17+1, after you left it, became 16, then 15, and then 14. And eventually it also opens up avenues for India to sort of build more connectivity ties, build more economic ties, investment ties, etc. But first, let me just for the benefit of the viewers, could you help them understand why did you stand up to China's economic coercion and how did you do it, being a small country and China being this economic giant?
I would see this 17, 14 plus debate as a part of a larger strategic approach that
Sure.
Lithuania has adopted vis-a-vis Indo-Pacific.
Sure.
And here, this turn again, it comes with the general quest for new markets and new partnerships. I mean, that was like a natural course of development for Lithuania. I mean, 30 years of our independence, now 35, we split into certain categories. So the first decade would be about your own return and reintegration with the European community. The second one was building and establishing yourself more firmly in the international framework, WTO, building alliances, and then Russia's aggression against Ukraine by taking Crimea, then prompted a new search for security alliances and partnerships. So that was another decade dedicated to that. And then we had COVID, and then COVID showed the vulnerability of both Europe and including ourselves on China as a major producer even of face masks.
Yeah.
But when in moments of crisis, you just literally discover you don't have something to protect yourself with.
Yeah.
So, and then that was another strong incentive to go and look beyond. So what could be the other sources for supplies, and how can we restructure our supply chains in that regard? So Lithuania had adopted, started developing and adopted a strategy for Indo-Pacific. We targeted certain points with whom we could have a relationship. Here, Taiwan came as one of those potential markets. We looked around, we saw that many member states of the European Union have a commercial and trade relationship with Taiwan, and we opted to do the same.
Yeah.
But what we discovered in this particular quest, that for China, for People's Republic of China, it was no longer okay. That's like there's a new entry in this established framework of relationships that Taiwan had, and then that's where the economic coercion started, and that coercion then made us review what is the really basic value of us being in certain framework like 17+1. And then the story developed.
Yes, of course. Yeah, that's what I say, that I mean, for many in India, actually Lithuania has become sort of synonymous with being a small country that stood up to China, and then that also urged the European Union in general to sort of really work on the anti-coercion instrument. It's a different thing that I think it's not really been used so far legally, but in the development of the anti-coercion instrument, I think Lithuania then plays a very important role. All right, now since we are discussing about China, and since you mentioned that Lithuania also developed this perspective towards Indo-Pacific, let's just talk a little bit about India-Lithuania relationship first. You've been ambassador of your country to India. You also speak the language, so you have a very good hang of India's strategic culture, economic aspirations as well. What are the areas, do you think, where India and Lithuania can cooperate? I hear from a lot of decision makers now that as Europe is transforming as a security actor, there is an instrument called SAFE, which is about mobilizing $1.5 billion. It's a loaning mechanism given to you by the European Commission. And I do hear that India has finally applied for that. So, I mean, that is a discussion which is still in the making. I mean, I wouldn't be very clear on what is India's position on it right now, what is Europe's position. But apart from that, what are the other areas? Do you think it's tech, it's trade? What areas? Could you help us understand that?
Well, SAFE is 800 billion of euros, so it's really a huge investment that the European Union is making to boost up its own defense production capacity, and then here partnering with countries which could help to facilitate this growth and the change in the EU is really a desirable objective. Now, here we might have certain disagreements about how deeply European Union can and should engage with countries which still continue to pursue a very active and strong relationship with Russia, including in defense relationship with Russia, because that is then an open question. How do you, if you develop technologies together with such partners, how do you ensure that the technologies you create together are not passed to Russia?
But does that not apply to? And I'm sorry to butt in here, Mr. Kalpsha, but I want to understand this better. I completely understand security concerns, and for example, India would be wary of a defense partner developing close ties or technological partnership with, say, a country like China or Pakistan because of our security concerns with those regions. So I completely understand that. However, when I look at Europe, I do see that there is a case of France or the SOE aviation selling Rafale jets or planning to sell the Rafale jets to a country like Serbia that has very close ties with Russia. And why do you, so do you think that you would have reservations on those kind of decisions as well? Or do you think this is somewhere that, India gets singled out because of its
No.
reliable and old relationship with Russia?
I didn't even mention India in this
Oh,
particular
then
case.
pardon me for taking that liberty, but I
but
wanted to understand it
yeah,
better.
but what this particular member state or what particular ally is doing as part of their bilateral contracts with another partner country, third country, as we would say. So yeah, we can have our concerns, we can express them, but in the end, it will be a part of bilateral exchange of the two countries.
Right.
Then when it comes to the overall European Union collective policy,
Mm-hmm.
where we are part of the decision makers, so
Mhm.
yes, then we are not only relaying those concerns, but we're trying to make a framework which build a certain infrastructure preventing from the risks. It's not that we have to exclude the partnerships and relationships with their countries having close defense partnerships with Russia, but then we have to put all the safeguards on the way. I mean, like for Ukrainians have developed amazing defense technologies over the last 4 years,
Right.
and they are not sharing with them easily, even with us NATO countries as such, and
Okay.
for a certain reason. I mean, Ukraine is fighting its existential war, right, for survival. So if you just give up your technology freely to everyone, if it lands in the enemy's hands and they start applying the same technology against you, or if you develop counter technology to fight what you have built,
Okay.
that becomes a major security risk.
Mm-hmm.
So for European Union, Russia has been identified as the major security risk. I mean, it's all over our strategies, our papers, and our strategic dialogue among ourselves that we have. I mean, nobody doubts that, nobody questions that. Russia is a major threat. So again, then if you engage in partnerships with third countries where the risk of those technologies you build then pass over and land in the hands of Russia, that is then undermining your own security.
So then, is Europe
so-
then and the
yeah.
countries within the European Union? And I ask you particularly because you've lived in India for 5
Yeah.
years. Do you think that you're also ready and you're at a stage where you're able to successfully, or you will be able to successfully sort of compartmentalize these concerns? Because India does have a long-standing relationship with Russia, and India has all reasons to sort of invest in a relationship to keep it stable enough, because it is crucial for India's national interests.
Absolutely, but India is also transforming its national defense policies.
Yeah.
Such.
So I mean,
it's
yes,
diverse. It's
yeah,
diversifying.
one should say that, yes. So it's now,
diversifying, and then security package as such, it involves many different parts. I mean, if now to follow again U.S. national strategy, the security strategy language that Europe has to land on its feet and rise up in a sense of reboosting European armies as a collective. I mean, it involves so many things. Some of them are new, latest technology. Some of them technology still to be created, but a huge part of that is also to build up the technologies which already exist in the market for decades. And Europe deliberately was, or unwillingly was not buying that just because thinking the US will come at any moment and protect you from any foreign threat. That will have to be replaced by those assets which are available in the market. They can be produced with India. They could probably produce in India. And again, this is billions and billions of contracts.
Yeah.
I guess, but not only India, even the United States themselves would be happy to host this part of production, and here the competition will be ongoing. But so there is no take it or leave it or black or white partnership, but building in a framework which makes us more immune to really existential threats that we face from the East. I mean, that I guess you also are partners in India.
No, well, I mean,
will also
yes.
understand that.
No, of course we understand that. I mean, this is like how do you build on convergences and sort of minimize divergences. And of course, I think when it is about a deal between two sides, it also be sort of sensitivity to each other's concerns sort of builds into that, and I cannot overstate it. But just because we are mentioning Donald Trump again, and Donald Trump is of course the flavor of the season, and he's always the flavor of any season ever since he has come back. But there's one discrepancy that I do see, and correct me if I'm wrong, that just as the administration came up with a national security strategy with a lot of polemics and with a lot of rhetoric, etc., but just a couple of days later, or maybe just the next day, the Congress came up with the National Defense Authorization Act, where they protected. They had some restrictions on the ground that U.S. cannot withdraw from Korea, South Korea. U.S. troops cannot withdraw from Europe, and actually talk about U.S.'s role in Europe's defenses, at least for this year and next year. And also, it has many provisions for Ukraine. So I do see that in the Trump administration, I do see that there is a part of rhetoric and there's a part of drama, and that Trump's unpredictability. And on the other hand, I do also see a kind of a pushback from the larger Republican Party and the Congress to sort of not change the status quo so easily and so drop of a hat. Do you share this assessment about United States, or would you have a different view?
Well, in a democracy, you would have a variety of views, and since U.S. is a democracy, they will definitely have many different opinions. Policy proposals being tabled in the Congress, it has to be passed. I mean, when it becomes a document, then we'll have a different conversation. And I guess, and today is part of a domestic political debate, which for me as an outsider would probably not be mostly proper to comment on. But in general, what we believe, I mean, this in Lithuania, we should not be frightened too much or frightened to a paralysis by what this national security strategy has produced as emotionally or politically reverberating across the European continent. Probably it should be again another, let's hope not the final, but really strong wake-up call in a way that we have to realize it's our responsibility to protect our continent.
Right. No, I agree with that.
Then we have to take it seriously. And even just a minor thing, defense spending. You do remember Donald Trump's first administration, he himself so forcefully pushing all of NATO to get at least 2% of GDP
and he couldn't.
spending. So we have reached that in 2000, only after Russia invaded Ukraine now with full scale and annexing parts of Ukraine's territory in 2022. But so before that, it was not enough. Right? Taking off Crimea. Now we speak about 5%.
Okay.
We have that agreement, and Lithuania is putting 5% into national defense already from January next year. 5.4%, and will be the record high.
No, you're right. I do see that in Estonia and other countries.
So the question is it easy for Lithuania? Don't we have other pressing domestic needs? Don't we have people to take care of, to invest in education and in new infrastructure and whatsoever? But to understand that security is our responsibility, and you have to deliver here. So here you do this reallocation of monies. Why ever? And will other NATO allies do the same? So we keep pushing that train all together.
All right, Mr. Kalitra, you've been so grateful with your time. And also, I must really thank you for a very candid conversation, because I asked you many difficult questions, because the purpose is to really have and build a genuine understanding of what is going on in your theatre. Just my last question to you. You've been to India for 5 years. Is there any message that you would like to send across to your friends in India or whoever's watching you?
Well, absolutely. Let's build on the positive momentum in our bilateral relations, Indo-Lithuania relations. I mean, we do not have outstanding issues. We have many views on which we converge. There's certain areas where we would have different views, but this is definitely not a kind of obstacle for closer cooperation. So it's time to come to Lithuania. I know that so many Lithuanians travel to India, and why for Indians to come to Lithuania is important. My first feeling when I landed there in 2013 was, look, how I'm going to promote this country where people still struggling with the name of it, and is it Lithuania or is it
Yes.
Ukraine? And so many times I've heard
Yeah.
this double checking question. What is
Yes.
that? So I think we have progressed a bit,
Mhm.
and then we should progress even more. So students
Yeah.
coming here,
Yeah.
talents coming here. So again, to work in Lithuania. Lithuania is the growing economy, and it's growing really fast. Just the first or second fastest growing economy in the European Union in terms of doubling its GDP per capita
Okay.
over the last 20 years. And
All right.
hardly any other would have accomplished.
Yeah, I mean,
Same
that's right.
criteria.
Actually, that's another reason why we need to study the Central and East European
Yeah.
countries so well, because there's a perception that there has been sluggish growth in Europe, but when you come to the side, you see that countries like Poland or yourself, is growing very fast. Mr. Laimonis Salat Kelpsha, it was an honor having you for the
Thank you.
Worldview, and that was Mr. Kelpsha, who is the Foreign Secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Lithuania, and you were watching the Worldview with Swasti. Stay tuned for yet another episode.